The old saying goes that you are what you eat. Occasionally, you'll get the old cornball saying, oh well, I don't remember eating a fucking legend, or a goat, blah blah blah, some cringy shit like that. But the age-old quote runs true still. We are ultimately what we consume in the broadest sense, not just in an eating sense, in what we watch and physically do as well. Us humans, we are all creatures of nature. I am because I do. If you work out regularly, you become a weightlifter. If you paint regularly, you become an artist. If you watch a TV show religiously, you become a fan, and so on and so forth. Of course, there are things that humans can latch onto that can lead down the wrong path, when an interest in a particular area becomes obsession, which then spirals out of control, i.e. having framed photos of serial killers on the wall, which then ends up turning deadly. For me, being a true crime YouTuber, I read a lot of nasty shit on the topic because it interests me, yes, or I wouldn't do this, but for some it's a downward spiral, the world of serial killers, which sees them walk down their favourite killer's footsteps, literally. This is the case of Shaye Groves. Shaye Groves, she was apparently quite strange. She was unique. The way she dressed, what she was into, she used to like Chucky dolls and was interested in them. There were warning signs there after Shaye Groves nicknamed her friend Chucky after everyone's favourite murdering doll. Pretty weird nickname, unless her friend actually looked like this. When we were younger, she was different to what she is now. She was more girly, but she was never like a girly girl, and she always stood out from the crowd. We'd all be in bright colours, and she'd be the one in dark clothes, even from that young age. She didn't wear what she wore now. She wasn't a goth, but she was always unique. She's always been a bit strange. This is how an ex-friend of Shaye would describe her when growing up. In general, I would say she was a bit different. Nothing too crazy if you ask me, except that child play Chucky shit, which is a bit of a red flag. I mean, the fact a child that young has seen child's play is raising alarms in itself, if you ask me. However, for a while, this appeared to have just been a teen/young girl phase that she had potentially grown out from. In 2019, she was seen smiling, looking like a loving mother, having a great day baking cakes with her younger daughter. She was the mother of one. She looked happy as a mother, embracing motherhood with ease. In a post to her daughter prior to her starting primary school, Groves wrote of her pride that she had grown up to be a quote, beautiful independent girl with a whole lot of attitude and promised to always be here to guide you. Old habits would die hard, however, and the Chucky obsession from her younger days would flourish again and manifest itself in an obsession with horror and serial killers. The walls in the house that she shared with her 3-year-old daughter were lined with photos of serial killers, from wall to ceiling, everywhere you looked. There was no escape from the glaring eyes of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer and Myra Hindley, as well as many, many more. Imagine you take your kid round here for a sleepover, walk in and you see all these eyes looking at you scarred everywhere. I know the first thing I'd be doing, getting the fuck up out of there right away and taking my kid straight with me. Adios, amigo. So amongst these serial killers scattered all over the wall, she had an appropriately designed coffin-shaped bookshelf, and on top of this coffin-shaped bookshelf lay her collection of Celtic daggers, which I'm guessing serves as an inspiration for this interesting looking face tattoo here. Her daughter would be having fun playing with dolls, as you do, hopefully not a Chucky doll though, while her mother would be playing with her collection of knives and binge watching serial killer documentaries. Here is her coffee cup collection, interesting to say the least. Jeffrey Dahmer, Freddy Krueger and lastly but not least, Crime Junkie, all appropriately covered in bloody handprints. This unhealthy obsession would go hand in hand with the sexual fetish for heavy BDSM involving domination and masochism, which would reach a boiling point when she was introduced to 25-year-old Frankie Fitzgerald, who himself was a father of 2. The pair, like most British love stories, past and present, would meet up in a pub, the good old boozer, and they would end up getting it on. Frankie Fitzgerald, he was putting it down. I guess you could say that Shaye fell in love with him for his performance in their acts, and in turn she became very possessive over him. A serial killer obsessed woman becoming obsessed and possessive after BDSM fueled sex. I wonder what could possibly go wrong. Oh, well, let's introduce knife play into this BDSM fueled sex too, just to make things a bit more interesting. So their relationship spanned for 6 months and their sexual appetites were pushed to the absolute limit. Knives that were plastered with horror movies like Chucky, Jigsaw and Pennywise, they were all used for the knife play that I mentioned before. So in case you're not familiar with knife play, like me, I had no fucking idea what this was. Knife play is a form of consensual BDSM edge play involving knives, daggers and swords as a source of physical and mental stimulation. Knives are typically used to cut away clothing, scratch the skin, remove wax after wax play, which is a whole other kettle of fish that I've not bothered diving into. So if you want to find more about wax play, you'll have to Google it yourself. Overall, they're simply used to provide sensual stimulation. So all around, pretty mental stuff, not vanilla at all, but whatever floats your boat, I guess. So they've been in this relationship for 6 months or so, and I guess you can say it's getting pretty serious / is already very serious, when suddenly their fairy tale romance and all the butterflies and all that good shit would come crashing down out of the blue. Fitzgerald is seen on the low, on the sly, messaging another girl who Shaye thought was 13 years old, and he wasn't seen by just anyone doing this. No, he was seen by his serial killer obsessed missus. It turned out the girl that was messaging him was actually 17 years old, by the way, and Mr. Fitzgerald had blocked her, but Shaye had seen him blocking her, or the fact he'd received messages from her, and this set her on one. So as I say, Shaye, she would see red. She is raging, she's fucking fizzing. The 6 months of love, affection, knife play, BDSM, and whatever else the fuck in between was all for nothing, and in her eyes, she was hurt. If there's one person you don't want to piss off, it's someone obsessed with serial killers. Never mind fall asleep in their house after pissing them off. So Frankie Fitzgerald, he was asleep, he was catching some Zeds, as you do. It was the middle of the night, there was darkness all around. Everything in the house looked the same as usual, except one of the Celtic knives that was appropriately housed on the coffin shelf was nowhere to be seen. In the night, a silent assailant made her way through the house where Fitzgerald lay, being careful not to wake her target. This assassin had been trained by countless hours of gore, horror and tales of serial killers. As Fitzgerald lay sleeping, defenceless and unaware, Shaye would cross the fine line from knife play to murder. His throat was brutally cut, with blood spurting everywhere. As he lay bleeding out, Shaye, in what you could describe as a frenzy, would stab her lover in the chest 22 times, leaving him to bleed out. Frankie Fitzgerald was dead. His true crime-obsessed girlfriend's dream had become a reality. Unfortunately for him, her dream was his nightmare, and this was a nightmare that he would never wake up from. Shaye, in her vast obsession with serial killers, thought she was invincible, and she knew all the tricks of the trade. Her carefully studied tales of Dahmer and Moira Hindley had prepared her for this moment, and she went about thinking her escape plan. Obviously, of course, she would be the prime suspect in Frankie's murder. I mean, he was fucking dead in her house. You couldn't get much more obvious if it was her, to be honest. Either way, she got her thinking cap on to come up with some story to get her off the hook. She said that she was a victim of sexual assault and that Frankie, well, he had been raping her. The pair, in their BDSM-fueled knife play parties, they would actually record themselves in the act getting freaky. So Shaye, she thought to herself, right, I'm going to try my luck at editing here. Could have been Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere, who knows. But either way, she tried to edit these clips of them shagging to make it seem like he was raping her. How she thought she could do this, I have no fucking idea. I honestly can't comprehend how this shit would have been edited, but either way, it wasn't edited too well. Let's just say that. It was some amateur filmmaker type shit. So she goes to her friend after killing Frankie, and she says he's been abusing me, graping me, sexually assaulting me to try cover her tracks and give us a reason to the brutal murder. She also contacts another friend, giggling on the phone, after slaughtering Frankie, and she would actually end up showing this friend his mutilated body, bragging, saying, quote, "I've done him." Frankie Fitzgerald died at Shaye's home in the early hours of the 17th of July 2022. She had done it out of jealousy of the thought of him messaging another girl, who she mistakenly thought was 13 years old and was blocked in the first place. Essentially, it was all over nothing. In the end, she was sentenced to a minimum of 23 years in prison, meaning she will be released in 2047. So, to take it back to what we spoke about initially in this video, to me, it's one of these things. It's very easy for humans to become obsessed with things and take it too far. As I say, you are what you eat at the end of the day. If you as a human are constantly diving in and looking at gore and watching horror, then naturally you're going to become desensitized to it. Like if you're watching someone getting beheaded in one video, someone getting hit by a car the next video, someone getting hit by a train the next video, the thought of that happening has no effect to you at all. So for Shaye, stabbing Frankie Fitzgerald felt like nothing. She had essentially engulfed herself in this life of gore and horror to the point where murdering this man in cold blood was nothing. In the end, she was actually able to video him, photo him, laugh at him to friends. This was a father of two and a person who she'd been in a relationship with 6 months. So it tells you a lot about her. She's a straight up sociopath. For you to murder someone you were in a relationship with and to give zero fucks after, it's just terrible. She was completely desensitized. Even in court, she wore a satanic jacket and she laughed as her sentence was handed out to her, clearly giving zero fucks whatsoever. But yeah, as I say, it's a fine line between being a fan and being obsessed, and that obsession spiraling out of control. You just gotta make sure you never tread on the wrong side of that line. Take it easy.